Today, we're diving straight into a profoundly moving 51-year story of marriage, severe illness, and absolutely unwavering faith. We're basing our journey today on Karen Jones's incredibly raw, transparent memoir, Keeping Up with the Joneses. And let me tell you, this is definitely not your typical fairy tale romance. It's a gritty, real-life look at what in sickness and in health truly means when the sickness comes way too early and stays for a really, really long time. So let's just get right into it. Author Chris Maxwell actually hit the nail on the head when he wrote, "Keeping Up with the Joneses is an invitation. Join the trip, enter the story." And that's exactly what we're doing today. We're going to be guided by the very words, those intimate love letters, and the deeply personal visual memories left behind by Karen and her late husband, Bill Jones. We are literally stepping right into their shoes. Just take a look at this decorated wedding car from 1973. It perfectly captures a moment of pure, naive optimism, right? Streamers, a makeshift flag, the wide open road ahead of them. They were only 18 years old, madly in love, and completely unaware of the massive life storms that were about to test the very vows they were so eager to make. Which brings us to Section 1, an extraordinary, ordinary journey. Before we get into the trials, let's establish exactly who these two people were. They were an everyday couple. Bill wasn't a celebrity, Karen wasn't a rock star, but these intimate, cropped portraits freeze such a profound moment in time. Just two separate individuals, teenagers really, committing to build a unified life. Their story gives us permission to look at the actual reality of long-term commitment, one that's filled with immense passion for sure, but also incredible prolonged pain. And this quote beautifully anchors the legacy of their relationship. Bill wrote this on their 48th anniversary. "Our life is an adventure of love and a testimony of grace. I sure am proud to call you my wife." It shows us so clearly how their youthful, somewhat blind infatuation evolved into this deeply rooted, enduring partnership that survived things most couples frankly never have to face. But to truly grasp the weight of their journey, we have to flip back to the beginning of the scrapbook. Section 2, Young Love and Sudden Storms. The sheer intensity of their young love letters is just striking. Karen wrote, "You're the one and only for me. I pray I never have to be without you." They kept boxes and boxes of these unpolished, super honest letters. They're filled with this beautiful, blind faith that everything was just going to easily work out simply because they loved each other. But as we can see on this timeline, their fairy tale was interrupted incredibly fast. Bill had a persistent kidney infection back in high school that hindered his football playing, but he just didn't think it was all that serious. Well, by the summer of 1973, his symptoms had worsened drastically. And by that fall, serious medical intervention had begun. The harsh, escalating reality of chronic kidney disease had fully entered the chat. Now, the crucial thing to understand here is how they processed this initially. They had a really strong faith, but there was a certain naivete to it. They honestly figured that because God had brought them together, and because God had called Bill to preach, well, everything would just be perfectly fine. It's a very human assumption, right? Expecting that a divine calling basically guarantees a life free of sickness or struggle. All right, Section 3, In Sickness and in Health. This marks the most testing era of their relationship. This is where In Sickness and in Health completely stopped being just a poetic line in a wedding ceremony and became a daily, grueling reality. Yet, despite his failing health, we see Bill pushing forward with just unbelievable drive. He didn't let the illness stop his calling. He kept pastoring, kept studying, and kept inspiring others, even while facing severe physical limitations that would have sidelined almost anyone else. But behind the scenes, things were incredibly hard. Imagine this. Karen was working a totally monotonous factory job, inspecting watches on an 8-second cycle, 8 hours a day, just to keep them financially afloat while Bill studied. She'd daydream of him at college with other people, living a normal life. She actually fought the very real urge to leave. She was grounded only by a deep spiritual conviction, a literal voice in her spirit asking this powerful question. If you walk away from him, you are walking away from my will for your life. What makes this explainer so powerful to me is that this wasn't some sanitized, picture-perfect faith. Karen impartially details her deep, raw anger at an all-powerful God who absolutely could heal Bill, but simply didn't. And what's really amazing is that one Saturday night, after a really grueling dialysis treatment, Bill essentially forced Karen to confront those exact feelings. He knew that if he passed away, he couldn't leave her harboring that intense anger. She had to confront it right then and there so she wouldn't lose her faith entirely. Yet right alongside all that immense pain, their story is peppered with moments they experienced as profound miracles. Karen details having a literal vision in a church of a baby falling from the ceiling out of a sheet. And that very vision led to what a family friend called a miracle of biblical proportions, the completely unexplainable adoption of their son, Blake. It was these unexplainable moments of light and revival that sustained them through the absolute darkest days of Bill's illness. Moving on to Section 4, A Love with No Filters. As the decades passed, their relationship transitioned. Their love evolved from that flawless, naive teenage fantasy into what Karen powerfully calls a love with no filters. You know, today we live in an era totally dominated by social media filters and the myth of the perfect spouse. But Karen lays out their gritty reality. CPAP and BiPAP machines running all night, insulin pumps, defibrillators, walkers, and wheelchairs. There were absolutely no filters on their marriage. It was raw, it was messy, and it was deeply real. And despite all of that, despite the pain of trading carefree travel and a normal, relaxing retirement for wheelchairs and endless hospital visits, Karen's reflection reveals this deep, battle-tested gratitude. She writes, "My life is richer because you are in it." They weathered the tough storms together, and their bond became absolutely unbreakable because of it. Which brings us to our final chapter, Section 5, Saying Goodbye for Now. We reach the inevitable end of their earthly journey together. A moment filled with profound grief, yes, but also an incredibly lasting hope. 50 years after she wrote those passionate teenage letters saying she never wanted to be without him, their devotion was distilled down to something incredibly simple. Karen sat in a dark hospital room, listening to his labored breathing, simply thankful to be breathing the very same air as him. And in an act of ultimate, completely selfless love, Karen finally gave Bill permission to let go. She leaned in close and told him, "Honey, you can run to Jesus. Blake and I will be okay." She admits she uttered those words mostly because she knew she was supposed to say them, even as her own heart was completely breaking at the very thought of a life without him. This final, lingering visual memory really leaves us with the faces of a couple who traversed a full half-century together. A woman who navigated unexplainable miracles, endless medical emergencies, and an unyielding, completely unfiltered love. It's an incredible testament to the sheer endurance of the human heart. So as we wrap up this explainer, we're left to ponder one really powerful question. When the timeline ends, but the love remains, how do we actually find the strength to keep walking through the dark valleys? Karen's story isn't just about her and Bill. It's a mirror asking us about our own resilience, our own faith, and the extraordinary weight of an ordinary love story. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive today, and I truly hope this incredible journey stays with you long after we're done here.